What's up, guys? I actually recorded this video a couple weeks ago, but I just wanted to put it out, edit it minimally, and just give you guys this top 5 Necromancers video with a caveat at the end, because I did forget one of my favorite Necromancers, and usually I would just chalk that up to, okay, I'll include it in the list next time. I forgot the Adan trilogy in my top 15 of all time, even though it's definitely on that list. I forgot Dresden Files, even though it's definitely on that list. It's top 6 Necromancers, and the one I forgot is near the top. I'll cover that at the end of the video. Yeah, so every Sunday I want to start doing these Tropeborn videos. If the reception's not great, I may, if time is pressing, not put them out every Sunday, but the goal is to do them every Sunday to every other Sunday, where I list my favorite tropes. It could be top 5 Necromancers like we're doing here. It could be top 10 Barbarians. It could be an examination of tropes. It may not always be a list. If it's a more obscure trope that isn't as easily quantifiable, I'll take a more qualitative look at it and examine what the trope is. But I love fantasy tropes. I love sci-fi tropes. I feel like that word can kind of have a negative connotation in the community, or instead of things that adhere to tropes, we want things to subvert expectations, subvert those tropes. I mainly wanted to make these videos as a love letter to those tropes that I grew up on, that I come back to the genre for. And yeah, so this first video will be top 5 Necromancers, well, top 6. Peace. Enjoy, guys. Alright, what is up, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay, and in this video, the trope I'll be covering is top 5 Necromancers in fantasy literature. And obviously, I haven't read every single book with awesome Necromancers. No reader has the perfect fantasy catalog in their backlog of read books, so I need you guys to recommend me the Necromancers that I'm missing out on in this list. Without any further ado, my number 5 pick is going to be Chella from the Broken Empire trilogy. There are no happy endings for such as us, Chella. No redemption, not with our sins. And joy is borrowed, laughter shared on the road and left behind. He turned to Kai. I have killed children, Kai Summerson. In such company, you will too. So the character of Chella is an antagonistic force to our main character, Jorg Ancrath. And it's kind of hard to have a character that feels like a villain when your protagonist is as vile as Jorg. But Mark Lawrence somehow achieves this because Chella is absolutely detestable. As awful as Chella is, you do almost pity her at times because of the way she is maneuvered by the Dead King and the way she's outsmarted by Jorg. Obviously, you root more for Jorg than this necromancer that is completely void of all morality. Jorg is only mostly void of all morality. She is completely evil. Well, maybe not entirely evil. You can tell that she is just trying to survive in this world. She is a detestable character, but I still found her intriguing. In book 3, you follow Chella's story multiple times, so it's told from her POV almost, and I thought that those bits and pieces in Emperor of Thorns were very enjoyable, and I did enjoy her character, as vile as she was. Alright, so for my number 4 pick, I'm gonna go with Henka from the Obsidian Path series. I'm Henka. She hugged me, wrapping her arms around my waist and burying her face in my chest. Corpse cold, she held me like we were old friends, lovers long separated, molding herself to me. I'll see you again, she said. You'll come back to me, I know you will. Her eyes held no trace of doubt. So in the Obsidian Path series by Michael R. Fletcher, we follow the character of Crane, who is essentially the Dark Lord without his memories, and he's the protagonist, he's the protagonist. He's not the hero of his own story or this story. Crane is the main character. The deuterotagonist, or the second most main character, is definitely Henka, she's a necromancer. I can't really say more than that because it'll get into spoilers, but she is a character that is as vile as she is pitiable, but she's, unlike Chella, she has a lot more agency in this story. And she's very fiercely intelligent, and she is evil. She's evil. The more this series goes on, the more you empathize with her. and the less you empathize with our main character. But I thought Henka was an absolute joy to read and was probably my favorite character in the series. I don't know, because I thought Brenwick was also really enjoyable. Both I would put over Crane. Alright, so number 3 is kind of an out there pick when you're thinking about Necromancers, but it is going to be Olar Ethel from Malazan Book of the Fallen. I am Byrne, the sleeping goddess in whose dreams lie flowers unending, even as those dreams twist into nightmares. Now I say Olar Ethel is kind of an out there pick for Necromancers because Necromancers are usually a mortal that has some sort of sorcery, magical ability that allows them to raise the dead. Olar Ethel, without getting into spoilers, is a much more eldritch, greater power in the world of Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is not a mortal that was bequeathed different abilities that allow them to raise the dead. This is a much more elemental, force of nature type character. Godlike. Beyond godlike, actually. So it does feel weird putting her on a list with a bunch of necromancers that are like true necromancers, but she does raise the dead, and she does fit the archetype of necromancer. She does fit that trope. She just doesn't necessarily fall in line with what we think of right off the bat when we think of necromancers, but she is without a doubt one of the best necromancers in fantasy fiction. Alright, so for my number 2 favorite necromancer, it's going to be Harrow the Ninth from the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir. You are my whipping girl. I hurt you because it was a relief. I have spent your life trying to make you regret that you weren't dead. All because I regretted I wasn't. I almost feel bad putting her at number 2. Like, how could Harrow Hark Nona Gesimus be number 2 on a list of necromancers? She's the necromancer. But there's just a character at number 1 that I've recently fallen in love with. So if I'd made this list like a month ago, Harrow would have been number 1. But number 1 is just awesome. But anyway, enough about number 1. Number 2, Harrow Hark Nona Gesimus is a resilient, loyal, strong character. She's so fiercely intelligent. She's terse at times, but in book 2 you really get a lot more of her character. And when she does speak in book 1, she's honestly such an asshole. So why is she one of my favorite characters? I think while she may be hard around the edges and while she may not be the most easy to get along with, I think that the journey we go on through all 3 of these books, Harrow is, in my opinion, I know Gideon is what people think of when they think of the Locked Tomb. To me, Harrow's Tamsin Muir's best character. I think she is the heart of this series, and she is the greatest necromancer of her age, and that is why she is number 2 on this list. And for my number 1 pick, even over Harrow Hark Nona Gesimus, I have the Corpse Queen herself, Eskara Helsine from The War Eternal by Rob J. Hayes. I choose to start my story in the pit. Down there, I was surrounded by monsters, some Terran and some not. Down there I made friendships to last a lifetime, and enemies who would last even longer. I was raised in the luxury of the Oran Academy of Magic, but I grew up in the squalor of the pit. What can I say about this character? I think Eskara is one of the best protagonists I've read in a book in a long, long time. I think her first person narration, if you're a fan of Sun Eater, I highly recommend you try War Eternal. The prose are not quite to the level of Arachio, but I think the first person voice and the way that this feels like an older character recounting their story, recounting their mistakes is so well done, and I have not seen it as well done recently in my reading, except for this and Sun Eater. And, you know, it's so interesting what Rob J. Hayes does with her character is you're told that this is a monster, that this is a vile person. She tells you that herself, that she is reprehensible, that she is the Corpse Queen, that she is a monster. And throughout this story, you really get a character that may view herself that way, but she is anything but a monster. She, you know, innocence may die because of what she does. Her actions may result in the death of innocence, but that's something that weighs heavily on her. She is not an evil character as much as she tells you, the reader, that she is. She is a resilient, loyal, strong individual, and she is one of my favorite characters and my #1 favorite Necromancer. Alright, what's up guys? So, the one I forgot to mention is Hills of Heather and Bone by K.E. Andrews. Actually, my friend David from Four Corners of the Page brought it up right after I made the video, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's one of my favorite Necromancers I've ever read, and I'm talking about Marana.
They were keepers of the dead, and people came to them to hear the stories of their deceased loved ones. I know you carry much sorrow in your heart, Marana, she says, but don't mourn what isn't dead yet.
This is such a powerful character, and she's not the stereotypical necromancer. You don't see her, raising... I mean, she does raise the dead, but the necromancer we see here is more one who communes with the dead and one who has immense respect for the dead. And the way that she has this relationship with those who have passed is very powerful. I would put her... It's kind of harder because this is a standalone. But it'd be in the top 3 conversation for this video. It'd be, I'd put her over Olar Ethel, even though Malazan is amazing. I'd put her up there with Eska and, who was my number 2? Number 2 was Harrowhark Nona Jesimus. Yeah, I'd put her up there with Harrowhark and Eskara. But yeah, let me know who your favorite necromancers are and what sort of trope you'd like to see me tackle next time. Peace.